Welcome to the True Knowledge Podcast Show with Atticus. True Knowledge is a podcast interviewing the most interesting experts in the world. Without further ado, here is your host.
Today's guest is Marsha Todd. She is a lecturer at University of North Carolina at Wilmington. She has more than 20 years of experience teaching courses. She's an expert at creating happiness and well-being. Today we're going to talk about the blue zones and how to live closer to nature. Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
The blue zones theory.
Did you read a lot about it?
Yes.
What did you think?
I want to hear your opinion first.
Okay, I think it's amazing. The fact that Dan Buettner, who works for Nat Geo, that he spent 12 years researching 7 locations in the world where people are living to be 100 and thriving. You know, not to be just living 100 and being dependent on someone, but that they're actually almost like they're saying the 100's the new, or it's the new 60 in these 7 areas. But he did 12 years of research showing what they have in common, and that makes them live to be 100 and thriving. And they all are very active in natural movement. Not so much that they take a Zumba class on Tuesday nights, but they have, all of them had their own garden. So there's a lot of squatting with gardening, a lot of movement, plus the fact that you're eating foods closest to nature.
I see.
Which is key. No processed foods or minimal processed foods. They rarely eat meat. If they do, it's fish that's in local waters without any pollution. And they eat half a cup of beans a day, which is doable, high in fiber, no saturated fat, high in protein, and they mix it either in casseroles or in soups and stews and things like that. And another thing they have in common is a huge, strong social connection.
Mm.
So, which is ideal for that we seem to be lacking nowadays.
Right. I'm thinking about like countries in Scandinavia. There's, a wider social boundary and things like that. They play into it.
Yes. So the blue zones, Dan Buettner, not only did he do the longevity thing, and a lot of people say, well, I don't want to live to be 100, but what if you do? Right. And the things we're doing right now each day contribute to how we're going to be 20 years in the future, or even closer than that. But he also has written a book on happiness, and he found different kind of blue zones of happiness places in Norway, Finland. They're all number one. Like the last 2 years, Finland's been the number one happiest country.
This interesting. I was in Austin, Texas, and I met this couple from Finland, and I sent him the article. It's like, "Whoa, Finland's like rated number 1 again." And he sent me this video, I think from Vox, about like, is Finland really number 1 happiest country in the world? And they went to Finland, interviewed the people, and they were actually shocked that they were number 1.
That's funny you say that, because in my happiness class this past semester, I had a student from Finland that I didn't even know. And I was talking about it, and she's like, I'm from Finland. And then she said the exact same thing.
Yeah.
She said that she feels like people here, and maybe it's more of the southern thing, but are friendlier than Norway. But she does think there's less anxiety and stress.
Right.
So maybe it's the absence of that creates more happiness.
Yeah, definitely. So as an econ major, this theme that pops up, it's almost like maybe economic growth is not the only thing we should strive for, right? Like how you talk about how they have their own garden, they're more socially connected, so they might not be spending as much time working or striving to get somewhere.
Also, people are treated the same regardless of their occupation.
Right.
So the trash collector is regarded the same as the physician there, and they usually have a 30-hour work week.
Yes. Which
helps. And then on the opposite spectrum, Japan seems to be one of the least happiest places, because they actually have a word, I want to say karushi, if I'm saying it correctly, that means they work themselves to death.
I was in Japan a year ago or two. Very fascinating. I think a lot of people really admire that culture, but I think that culture is under a lot of stress. I think where those like beautiful art or anime came from is really just a restriction of the physical presence, so they have to use the imagination to go somewhere. So they create these beautiful art. Well, that's my hypothesis of it.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Society is very, very safe. It's extremely safe, but talking to people that live there, Japanese, it seems like a lot of cultural rule that's embedded in society, that which is really interesting.
Well, Singapore is considered one of the happiest places also, and they say that's why they like the safety of having a lot of rules. They know what they can do, what they can't do,
Right.
and they find, I guess, safety, like you said, in that.
Yeah. It seems like there's a balance, right, between that individual freedom that we crave and then having that almost like a societal safety, right?
Mm-hmm. And Costa Rica is considered one of the happiest places. And if you've ever been there, you'll see that they don't have a whole lot, but they do have sense of community, family. They eat well. They're outside a lot, not inside under fluorescent lights like we are all the time.
Right.
So there's a lot to be said for how you're raised and what you're used to also. But the fact that, and you can let me know if this is true or not, that college students are experiencing more anxiety. In fact, it's surpassed depression now. Do you agree with that?
I've heard that. Since depression, like the Great Depression.
Well, we're not as happy as we were even 10 years ago as a country.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder why we have more convenience. We have more choices on things, and it's like the latest iPhone.
Right, like illusion of choices.
Exactly. People think this is going to make me happy, and then book we use in the happiness class is called The How of Happiness. Dr. Sonia Lubomirsky is the author, and she has a saying called hedonic adaptation, that when you get something like the latest iPhone, you think it's going to make you happy, and it does, but for a very short time, and then you adapt to it, and then you're like, well, I can't get this phone to work, and then you start you put your happiness into materialistic things, and it won't last. So that's why the minimalist lifestyle. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
That they seem to be more. If you try to get into different demographics, they are a happier group because they're happy with what they have instead of what they don't have.
Yeah, I wonder if it's like a pendulum swinging back and forth. I look at all events, right? And I think it is like materialistic desire. It is a pendulum, like a repercussion from
I agree.
the Great Depression or things like that, right? Like when you didn't have a lot, and then so there's a middle point that we should try to figure out.
Absolutely, and that's a great way to put it. It is a pendulum.
Yeah,
you get so far one way, and then you start swinging back, and if we can just find our way in the middle.
Yeah, like the very wealthy, right? Back then, it's like they acquire a lot of materialistic stuff as a way to represent their wealth. But now it's like wealthy is really just having minimalistic but very clean-looking space in a busy city, right?
And that's another thing, location where you live.
Yeah.
Dan Buettner also did a study where he put picnic tables in the community's front yard, because we've gotten to the point where we put fences around. They say fences make the best neighbors, but we don't get to know our neighbors anymore.
That's true.
And so when he put picnic tables in front yards, that people met their neighbors, because people would be walking their dogs and they just say, "Hey, how's it going?" and start a conversation. So you get to know the people in your neighborhood. Doesn't mean that you don't have the option to stay in the backyard, but it's also the option to be in the front to actually meet people. Because we have definitely lost the social connection.
The social connection. Now everything's like online.
Exactly.
But it's not real.
Exactly.
In a sense, right.
Yeah, we mistake our connection with social media with face-to-face connection. It's not the same thing, unfortunately. And we compare ourselves on social media. And that's one of the biggest, if you're going to be unhappy, that's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
So we see people, and you see, as you all know, the highlight reels of someone's life.
Yes.
And they only put the thing that they want us to see on social media. Everyone does it. So then we think, well, why can't my life be like that? They're traveling, or they're in the best relationship, and it's simply not true.
Yeah, it's definitely not true. Yeah. I think, so right now, I was talking to everybody about this. Right now, I think we're in an attention economy. So whoever can capture the most amount of attention is going to get the most amount of profit. So, the rise of like clickbait or even fake news or anything that's really exciting, emotionally driven. These are nothing new, right? Like I remember when you were a child, you go to like a convenience store and at the checkout aisle, there's always these magazines like something died or these like really clickbait titles on these magazines. Now it's just transferred online. But I think the next step is really going to be the trust economy. I think we're just going to realize a lot of these fake and people with no real substance or these things that just kind of drive your attention away if you're not careful with it. I think people are going to start valuing their attention. I think once a recession hits, when people don't have that like disposable time, they're going to start to really value their time, and then the attention might shift.
I agree.
I'm interested in that.
And when you think about time, the amount of time you put into work, when we buy something, if you equate it with that, is this worth 2 hours of my life at my job?
Yeah. Fundamentally change how you view.
Exactly. And there's so many storage units, and people buy stuff and they stick it in the closet. And again, it's the same thing on Amazon. It's so easy when it says, here's a deal for you today. And you think, oh, this is going to make me happy. And then as we know it, and they're also thinking with Amazon or other delivery methods like that, that it's the anticipation that makes you happy. And because you get that feeling of excitement knowing that you're going to get a package delivered. And then once you get it, that feeling goes away. So it's not so much that you're not happy with what you got, but that feeling's gone of anticipation, which people like. So that's why we keep buying more stuff, because we like that feeling.
Where do you think it's going to be headed? So it seems like, Amazon has got so good with like the algorithm and stuff to really promote the things that you like, right? And especially, I think, they repeatedly show up on different devices that you're using. Mm-hmm. So they're going to catch you at a time when you are in this emotional state of buying.
Right.
And you fall for it. Right.
Mm-hmm. And so, like you said, probably a recession that might be coming might change things up a little bit as well. If we can get our focus back on each other instead of on social media. And again, I'm not a hypocrite. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, but I also have more face-to-face contact with people than I do through friends on social media, which I think is really, really important. There's so much research done on happiness, and that usually is the number one, is social connection. Mm-hmm. That makes people happy, and good social connection. And you only need 3 people. There's been a lot of research on this too. You don't need a whole entourage of people following you around like J-Lo. You just need 3 strong people in your life that you can count on regardless of what's going on.
Have you done a study on like both male and female? Because I've seen this trend of, not even trend, but I just noticed that girls are a lot better at social connection and stuff. They typically are more pro-social behavior and things like that.
Yeah, definitely there is, but there's also a little bit more the social comparison. Not that men don't do it also.
Right.
But men, and not to generalize, but men are also the type of, and again, this sounds like a huge sweeping generalization, but men can have a disagreement and then go have a beer 5 minutes later.
Yes.
And sometimes, and again, that's not to say that women don't do the same thing sometimes or men do the opposite, but definitely with our relationships, we sometimes we put way too much into the relationship expectations.
I see.
Yeah, and that's usually, it's the number one cause of divorce, they say, is unrealistic expectations.
Wow.
We expect the other person to make us happy. The other person's a human, so they're going to make mistakes. We're not happy then, and we blame them for our unhappiness. So that's, one of the biggest problems.
It's really dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
So what are other stuff you know about divorces?
Well, besides unrealistic expectation, and going back to that hedonic adaptation, that's the book we use, Dr. Lubomirsky talked about, they did a German study where people, they found after 2 years of marriage aren't any happier, like their happiness level, they're happy. And then that, for some reason, the 2-year mark, but then it picks back up again around the 10-year mark. So a lot of people, again, when they think, well, where'd the happiness go? The honeymoon stage is over. This must not be working. But you should redirect your relationship into a more mature relationship, like having goals together and building each other up instead of, can you make me happy, depending on someone else.
Like that honeymoon stage, right?
Exactly. It's, you can't stay infatuated your whole life. You would have exhaustion because you'd be at that level all the time. And a lot of people, that's why a lot of people are serial relationship people, because that feeling goes away as it always does. So they go, it's over, and they want to find that next feeling and move on to the next relationship.
I keep thinking about how nowadays everything, companies or really anything in life is just selling us chemicals, right? Like a dose of dopamine, right? Just like social media or even relationship.
And they've just had studies on that too, showing that when you get a like on social media, ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. And
I've had students that, of course, they have a fake Instagram. I'm sure you're aware of that, the Finsta. But if they don't get so many likes, then they take the picture down or the post down. If they don't get 100 likes within an hour, they feel like their post is a failure and it's embarrassing, so they take it down. So I think I've heard...
Well, they're crowdsourcing there.
Yeah. Did you hear that Instagram's doing away with likes, or they're thinking about it?
I've heard that.
What do you think about that?
I think we're really good for mental health.
I think so too.
Yeah. But I think it's going to be really interesting how it's going to affect the economy of the industry. in a way, have all these influencers that's essentially a lot of them are buying likes and stuff as a way of social proof.
That's true.
I wonder how that's going to go away, or what are the techniques they're going to use as a way to.
I'm sure they'll find a way.
Yeah.
But I like the idea for just the regular Instagram user, the social influencers, but the people that like I just take their post down because they're embarrassed they didn't get enough likes. I mean, that has to be exhausting too. Keeping track of stuff like that.
You're constantly judged.
Exactly. Yeah. So that feeling of, and that's one other thing about social connection, when you're not feeling judged by someone.
Right.
It's very liberating to no longer care what people think also.
Right.
Have you ever read Mark Manson?
Which book?
The Subtle Art of Not Giving.
Yes.
Yeah.
I finished that a few weeks ago, actually.
Yeah. What did you think about that?
I think one thing that really stands out was the story about his friend that died.
Yes.
At a very young age for him to have that realization.
Yeah. And that seems to be also in the book that we use. There's also a chapter on how to cope with trauma. And a lot of people get their identity tied up in the traumatic events that they've had. So you can have traumatic events and still have happiness in your life.
No. I'm actually reading a book on this. It's called Reclaim Your Power.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. It's this functional life coach talks about how to move. So he talks about right now on this chapter about how when we learn stuff, it's very like a head learning. And I think the next step is emotional learning from the heart or from the body. And I noticed this very like close line with like Tony Robbins and all these like top gurus and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think they're really going after something that's very innate. I think initially when you were younger, you have this emotional reaction towards things, right? But you don't really know how to control that yet. And as we get older, the frontal lobe develops and we'll get better at reasoning and such. And we're better at controlling our emotions. But I think the next stage of evolution is really just like using that emotional energy as a way of learning. So it's like really ingrained in your body. So it's not just you sitting there and learn, but maybe you do certain activity or do certain things to really ingrain it into you to get that full mastery.
I think Viktor Frankl is the one that said there's that space between stimulus and response, and therein lies your power. Yeah. So when you overreact, and it's so easy nowadays to overreact and to be offended, but if you can take like a second in that spot when something, a stimulus creates a reaction in you, but to control that before you respond. And if you've ever been in an argument with someone,
silent maturity, right?
Yeah, and when you're in an argument with someone, you start elevating your voice. They're going to elevate their voice. It's not going to end well.
The best way is actually to whisper.
Yeah, sure. Because people have a tendency to mirror what you're doing, and that's a good idea to whisper.
Once you start like lower your voices, they can't hear you, and they also lower their voices, and that anger subsides. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Maybe from like a standpoint, it seems like people are moving towards like this victimhood, right? It's really easy and it's comforting to be the victim, right? Because you have a huge support. I guess other victims also support you on these aspects and stuff like that. But if you want to move past that, to reclaim the power.
Exactly. And then sometimes people get tired of being around the victim all the time also.
Yeah. You see these people, they're trapped in certain cycles.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's attention in some cases.
Yeah.
And that's what they enjoy. But, again, the hedonic adaptation we talked about, there's a good part with it as well. They had a study showing that someone that was a paraplegic, of course, you're a big change in your life after an accident, it can actually work out for you where you adapt to your situation, even if it's a negative one like that, where you can still be happy even though life circumstances. And that's the big premise of her book. She has a pie chart, and she believes around 50% of our happiness is in our DNA. It's like anything else we inherit. And then 10% is in our life circumstances, which neither one you can control. But the 40% is where our thoughts and our behaviors make up 40% of our happiness, which is on us, which, as you know, the only person that can make you happy is yourself.
Right.
So to me, that's encouraging that even if you don't have the 50% DNA or your life circumstance, but 40%, that's still a pretty good percentage.
Yeah, that is.
That you can create your own happiness.
the first thought that came to my mind is, I wonder if they're doing certain research or certain way to tap into that 50% that's in the DNA.
Well, she does empirical research with her grad students, or she has done that. So she's studied, I think she's been in the field for 20 years doing research on happiness. And it's like your DNA, I think just acknowledging that maybe you didn't inherit the happiness gene, that can make you work a little bit harder on that 40% where your thoughts and your emotions are better produced for happiness.
Right. I'm still stuck on this idea of like, what if they can come up with a way to really tap into that 50%, right? Maybe I'm not so knowledgeable about the genetics of it, right? Maybe some people are more recessive towards it. They can activate it under certain circumstances. And then maybe some people don't have it.
They have found, and I know this is getting thrown out there a lot, but meditation.
Yeah.
Where they did a study with monks where they had them in doing an MRI, showing that their brains for meditation, actually the dopamine and the happiness center of your brain lights up more. So when you meditate. So I think that you can maybe control it a little bit more, but you have to definitely, and it's just like anything else, you don't learn a foreign language in one day. You have to practice it daily.
Right. And especially if you don't have that.
Exactly. You may have to work a little harder. Just like people that set point with your weight, some of us have to struggle a little bit more to maintain our weights because of our DNA. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like the same thing. You might have to work just a little bit harder for your happiness than someone that has that 50% already.
Right. And this conversation reminded me of, I was having a conversation with my econ professor, and he mentioned that, I guess, like the goal of life is to be happy, right? And I very much disagree with that. I think, when I was younger, I thought so. But I think maybe it's to sacrifice for something. And this is interesting, right? Because it seems like, maybe happiness is usually like when everything's in homeostasis. And you get to a point where you're doing things, but you don't have that external or internal pressure for you to like get ahead, having an edge, right? And I think in this society, it's very much like you want to have an edge, there's constant competition and things like that. And then, I guess the opportunity cost of that is really just maybe you don't achieve as much when you die, but you do enjoy the journey a lot.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever read any of the articles by hospice workers on regrets of people on our deathbeds?
Yes.
And to me, and I know intellectually we all know we're going to die, but no one likes to talk about it. But I think you can learn a lot from people, from their regrets that you don't, we make our own mistakes enough.
Right.
Learn from other people's mistakes so we don't make the same, what they've done. Yeah. And usually it's the fact that the social connection, they work too much. They don't, that brand new car is not going to be at your bedside when your last days are here. So it's not spending time with family. It's about doing things that you touched upon earlier. It's about things that they didn't do that they regretted. Because you get into your comfort zone, and trying something new might be scary to you. So you're like, I'm not going to do it because what if I fail? And even Stanford, I believe at Stanford has a class called Failing Well, where they teach students that people, and this is like a Brene Brown thing too, that the only people that don't fail are the people that don't try.
Right.
So it's easy not to do anything. You're not going to fail if you don't try. But even the Harry Potter author, J.K. Rowling, I think how many times was she rejected with her Harry Potter? And had she said, okay, well, you're right, this shouldn't be published. So if we learn that failure just means try again, or what you're doing isn't right, try a different way, but not to give up.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's like finding that middle point. So in our society, it's very competition driven and things like that. Mm-hmm. And we're finding that middle point where you can have that sustained happiness, but in a way you're also driven to compete, but in a way that's safe or healthy, or fair.
And the last chapter of the book we use is how to sustain your happiness. Because you can learn, we talk about 12 different strategies. You can learn about it, but if you don't put action behind it and apply it to your life, it's useless. So, and another thing you mentioned earlier that made me think of, Dalai Lama has even said, if you're unhappy, serve someone else. The best way you're helping them and you're going to feel good. It makes you feel good when you help someone.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very innate to us.
Exactly. Service to others, especially people in need.
Yeah.
It makes you feel good. And being grateful we have a tendency to focus so much on the negative aspects of our life instead of focusing on the positive. So we also, on gratitude, really suggest keeping a journal. And I know some people are like, oh, I'd rather not write stuff. I'm already doing enough. But just briefly at the end of the day, 3 great things that happen throughout the day.
Right.
And because we have such a tendency as humans to focus on the bad things, you can actually rewire your brain. If you had any psychology classes, there's that negative feedback loop. You can make it a positive feedback loop. When you just think about, I saw a hummingbird, at the theater today, and I saw a rainbow, or I got a phone call from my best friend. Things that really make you happy, and we don't focus as much on that. So gratitude.
Yeah, I definitely have, been practicing that for a while. I guess the question is, a lot of people probably go through these classes, right? And it seems like we go through life and certain things really bad happens to us, and we're kind of shocked back into reality. And we started focusing on things like gratitude and maybe trying to figure out ways to how to live better. But then how come it's really hard for people to sustain these habits, right? I'm just really fascinated with that. We know what the right thing is to do, but as we go on through life, it's almost like we're kind of forgetting other things kind of carries over our attention.
Go into autopilot.
Yeah.
You get up and you go to work and you do the same thing every day. So being aware that you're not doing it, but just like anything else, you have to make time to practice. We also suggest making, and I don't want to say vision board, but it's kind of like you can call it design your life, or you can just call it your goals.
Yeah.
And have it up where, if you have a financial goal, have it where you can see it every day, so that when you do get dinged by Amazon Prime and you're thinking, would I rather put this $20 towards getting my student debt paid off, or instead of buying something that I don't even need? So that helps keep you from being in that automatic pilot thing where you're like, this is what's important to me, so I'm going to put my energy into this. And by having it on your bathroom mirror or on your door or something that reminds you every day what is important to you, that kind of helps also.
Wow. So let's talk more about the blue zone.
Okay.
I'm really fascinated with that. I saw that they were trying to recreate the blue zone in different places in the world. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so it's not so much that you have to move to one of these 7 areas, but you just need to adapt the lifestyles that they've adopted to. And it's simple things. Dan Buettner was interviewing a woman that was 102, and she was making breakfast, and he said, oh, you make breakfast every morning, and you, again, not processed foods.
Right.
And she said, yeah, my son comes here for breakfast every morning. And he's like, well, how old's your son? And she's like, 82. Which is weird to hear someone say, my 82-year-old son's coming for breakfast, and he lives 2 miles away, so he walks every day.
Yeah.
So if we can get more natural physical movement in our lives, and then reduce the amount of processed foods that we eat, closer to nature, a whole foods, plant-based diet is ideal. At least just lean into it. I know it sounds kind of overwhelming at first, but maybe just one meal and then make it, every breakfast or something like that. And then stress management, social connection. So if you can adopt those main things into your current lifestyle, regardless of where you live, that's going to get you closer to a blue zone.
That's fascinating. It's I look at the city, right? It's like if you want to walk anywhere, it's not very convenient and stuff. It's almost set up in a way which should be as efficient as possible, but it doesn't contribute to our happiness.
Exactly. And they found also that if you have a longer commute, that creates more unhappiness. If you hear traffic, that kind of noise, that creates more unhappiness. I want to say, trying to think, Denver is the happiest actual place in the United States.
Wow.
And they have a lot of accessible outdoor recreation activities, which is high on the list also. They don't have billboards. So aesthetically, you don't see, you have mental clutter when you see a lot of distractions in your environment. So they include a lot of stuff, having a dog, although make sure that you can take care of a dog, but a dog makes you more physically active, and also companionship. So there's definitely a lot more happiness zones in the country maybe than the actual blue zones for longevity. Loma Loda in California is one of the blue zones also. And again, they have more of a vegetarian lifestyle, strong social support. I know I keep repeating myself, but these are the things that always, the commonality, the top ones that come up. that if we can just start adapting little things like that. Okinawa, Japan is another blue zone, and they don't have furniture in most cases. They get up and down off the floor, and that helps, as you know, talking about the elderly, the 100-year-old blue zone area, develops strong muscles that you use every day, getting up and getting down, because you know when you're elderly and you fall, it's usually it doesn't end well. So they have this keeps them from not using those same muscles that you use for stability and for standing.
Interesting. So I wonder, like, if we know what is true, how come we don't do it? Like, our city's not built in a way where it promotes more happiness or well-being in general. That's really interesting.
And I think that it's
like, why do we clutter and we strive to go to bigger cities? Maybe when you're younger and stuff like that. And then until we get older, we'll finally realize, like, maybe we want to have more time with our family, with kids and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it gets into, again, where you think that you have to be, you have to have a certain career, you have to do so many things to be successful, which is fine if that's what's working for you. But if you're getting burnt out, then it's not working for you. So, and I advise some students at UNCW, and it surprises me how many are in a major because their parents told them, I'll pay for your college if you do this major. Someone wanted to be in a major that your salary may not be as great, but that's what they wanted to do. But because of their influence, and to me, that's like, you're going to be spending a third of your life working. You might as well be working. I would rather spend less and be in a career that makes me happy than have more money and be miserable for 1/3 of my life.
Right.
And
I want to look at it from the parents' perspective, right? Like,
I get it. I totally get it, because you want your child to have.
Are they just afraid that the children is not going to be able to sustain on their own?
Exactly. They don't want them to struggle, so they're thinking if you have a higher income. So I totally get it. But if you're trading out higher income for happiness, it's not going to work out well.
This is just a theory or a thought that came to my mind. Do you think happiness is a very recent invention? So let me build this premise, right?
All right.
So nowadays we have a lot more options what we can do with our life and things like that. We have a lot more choices, right? But I keep coming back to this idea of, like, history, right? Like, and I don't know if it's 100% correct, but I think tough times creates tough men. Tough man creates peaceful time, and peaceful time creates weak man. The cycle continues, right? And it seems like if we're back in the Great Depression, or even move further down, medieval time or such, right? No one can really just sit around and strive to be happy. I suppose there might be certain monks and things like that where their whole career is about that. But it seems like to sustain your life, you just had to do what's necessary.
And it brings people together.
Yeah.
Remember when we had the solar eclipse and people were gathering outside, and even some classes were like, we'll start 10 minutes later so y'all can, and it is like everyone was looking up, and it was like a sense of unity.
Right.
And we don't have that as much as when other situations call for us to come together and support each other instead of tearing each other down.
That's very fascinating, because we all live in bigger cities now, but no one is really, it's hard to find that community feeling.
Yeah, about happiness being a current thing. And even, I'm sure you heard Abraham Lincoln. That's one of my favorite happiness quotes is, you make up, or someone can make up their mind to be as happy as they want to be. I'm paraphrasing, but you're only as happy as you can make your mind up to be. And Socrates did a lot of research on happiness also. So it's something, and every time you hear someone, I don't know how many times I've heard people say, all I want is to be happy. But unless you put action behind it, it's just a wish. So you have to, and not so much pursue it.
It's like happiness is almost like a skill that you acquire over a lifetime.
Exactly. Yes. And it's worth it. To me, it feels so much better to be grateful than to be not grateful. And when you have a traumatic event, even though it's, when you're first going through that traumatic event, you're not going to have where can I see the good in this? Usually it happens later. But knowing that something good is in it, even if it's giving you the experience of having gone through this to help someone else out. At the very least, you see people that have lost a loved one, and then they make it their life purpose to help others avoid whatever that person happens. So you're giving meaning to the traumatic event.
Are there any research on people that are really happy and like the group will influence the individual, right? So like if a group of people that's typically very happy, like would you be influenced by that compared to a group that's not very happy?
You mean like studying the monks that are generally happy?
So in a way, it's like, you know how sometimes the misery bands together, right? So does other people's unhappiness affect a person's happiness?
Like being around someone that's generally happy?
Yeah, compared to being around a group or.
I think so. If you've ever been around someone that's happy, and of course we're not talking about someone that's in denial, where you're happy regardless of the situation. But to know that you can maintain that happiness even though that 10% of your circumstance might not be great at the time. And things change, nothing's permanent. Eckhart Tolle writes a lot about it also, where he has a saying that in life you have three options. If you're in a situation that it's uncomfortable, change it. If you can't change it, leave it. If you can't leave it, your only other option is to adapt to it and figure out how to make it work. And there's really no other option than changing it, leaving it, or learning how to live with it. Yeah.
And it makes sense, right? Like if you hang out with someone that's happy, it's maybe not necessarily like you pick up on the happiness all the time, but you're really learning the tools that they're using.
Exactly.
And then you start becoming happier.
Right.
Because you're like, how did this person figure out the secret to life?
Yep.
What's that?
And it just feels good to be happy.
So I see almost like a toolkit that certain people have, right? So like if you hang out with people that's always unhappy, they just don't have the necessity of the tool, like don't understand access how to move to happier, so you can't learn from them how to.
And that's what a lot of students say. It's like it's almost sounds simple, the things that we talk about, but it works. And in most cases, it will work. And of course, we're not talking about. We covered this in the class. If you're chronically depressed, or then obviously you need therapy and medication in some cases. But doing the strategies they're a great supplement to that. Right. So we're not saying that this is a cure for extreme depression, but it definitely is something that you can include with your therapy also.
Right. And it targets a core problem.
Yes. Yeah.
So this is interesting because I'm very interested in philosophy, and it seems like the stuff we talk about are nothing new. Right? Like people have knew this thousands of years and stuff like that. But it seems like human hasn't got to the next stage of evolution where we can transcend this.
And we forget. Like you say, we get so busy with our everything that we have to do, and we get into that autopilot. We get up, we go to work, come home, watch Netflix, go to bed, and do the same thing. Right. And so you're missing out on creating your own happiness. Yeah.
So unless we have like certain events that cause us to kind of retreat back to whatever is true in nature, we'll kind of just forget and do the things
exactly.
And then we see over and over again.
And being in nature also, it's a strategy. Getting out. They claim that it's called forest bathing. I'm not sure if you've ever heard that term before. Yeah. That when you're in the forest, that the leaves from the trees actually emit an oil that's relaxing for humans.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So getting out in nature is another that we tend to not do as much as we used to.
Yeah.
And especially living here, we have no excuse not to.
Right.
And there might not be a whole lot of forest around here, but you can at least go to the ocean.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
I keep thinking about like every day we touch a lot of things, right? And majority of the stuff we touch are very inorganic, right? Man-made. Yes. Like when's the last time someone like touched a leaf or grass and things like that? It's very rare.
Yep.
Very fascinating. It's like we live in nature, but in a way that's very constructed where it's not.
That is true. So anything else about the blue zones? Anything that we haven't discussed that you, when you were doing your research, found interesting? Is there anything that you are going to adapt to your lifestyle?
Yeah, most definitely. I think it's always smart to start when you're younger, to build that habits in your 20s and stuff. So
that's so hard though to tell someone that's younger that they think that I got plenty of time to do this, or I'm not going to have to worry about this until I'm in my 40s, which is not true. things you're doing at your age right now.
I was talking to Teresa Walker about this, and she mentioned something about how, there's a lot of wisdom in older people, and maybe it's just in this culture why like younger kids don't really want to listen to it. But I noticed that younger kids will listen to another younger kid if they're ahead. Because they're like, oh, how did this person figure out the secret? Or how this person living so much better than I am?
And that's where social comparison is actually a good thing.
Yes.
Because it may motivate you and learn from someone that succeeded in the path that you want to succeed in, regardless of what that path is.
Right.
And you can learn from that person.
But that's interesting. Like, we don't want to listen to the elders because we think they're just... Yeah. And then the danger of that is like if you repeat some, I guess, good advice over and over, it becomes cliches and we don't want to hear it. It gets boring.
Right.
And things like that.
And with another thing about the blue zones, they even though they may not eat every meal together, they usually always eat dinner together, the last meal of the day together. And they make it where it's not like eat and then leave the table. They spend over an hour talking over their food, and they set a tablecloth and light a candle and make it I love the whole experience nice and reconnect with everyone at that time.
Yeah. Instead
of eating in front of the TV. Sometimes we eat behind in our car. So they have a glass of wine, assuming you're not an alcoholic or you're 21, but they think one glass of wine, it's relaxing and it slows everything down.
Wow, this is fascinating because I think it's almost like we had this technology growth, right? And this culture shifted. And maybe now we're shifting back into, this very tribal caveman, because when you're talking about eating together, it's almost like, why do people so fascinated about bonfires, right? Like, what's a group of people standing around looking at a fire?
Isolation is not good.
That? Yeah.
Yes, and even I want to say, in Britain, they have a ministry to study this loneliness.
Yes.
So many people are complaining about being isolated and lonely, and it's depressing, and you're not going to be happy when you're isolated. So they created a ministry for that.
Yeah. I wonder how people can get out of that, right? Like, the thing is, like, the joke is that, there was this picture of Jesus and disciples and stuff like that. And it was like, I want to know how Jesus in his like 30s also have so many friends, adult friends, right? And it seems like it's almost in our society or even society in general, it's like having friends when you're older or even finding new friends so much harder, especially after college. Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice for people?
Well, it's been my experience that you meet people in high school, you meet people in college, and then when you get into the work in your work area, you meet people there. Mm-hmm. If you choose to have kids, you're going to meet parents of your kids' friends. So it's almost like you meet people organically that way. Nowadays, they have so many meetup groups that you can, and ideally, meeting people that you have a common interest in is a great way to start. Doesn't mean you always have to have the same interest, but that's why I tell students on campus that on college campus, the student organization clubs that you all have, there's a zillion of them that you can, if you can't find something you're interested in, you can create your own, and you can meet people that way, in a common interest type thing. But a lot of people sit at home, expect someone to knock on their door and create a relationship that way. You have to take the initiative.
Why do you think these things happen?
Sometimes I think maybe some people think it's too much effort, or they've tried to meet people and it didn't work out.
I see.
So they're thinking, why bother?
Right.
And then they create that loop
that
again.
Loop. Mm-hmm. Right. Because they get the little dopamine shots from whatever the video games or movies that they're watching.
Exactly. So they feel that substitutes what they need, and eventually it doesn't work out.
Right. And it's interesting because like now it's like younger kids are using technology. So in a way, really taking away that social skills at a very young age.
For sure.
And it gets harder and harder as you get older.
That's definitely true. When you communicate through your phone instead of face-to-face,
right?
A lot of people have social anxiety because they're not used to doing that.
Yeah, well, like eye contact and things like
exactly.
that. Notice it's very fascinating. Mm-hmm. That's kind of alarming, right? Like maybe if a kid didn't grow up with technology, when they go to college and they try to interact and it didn't work out a few times, they might just try again or try a different strategy. But someone that grew up with this almost like a clutch. Wow.
And if it's important to you, even if you're failing once again, keep trying.
Right. Wow, that's such an interesting thought. Like the phone is really just a social clutch.
Yep. It's not a good. And it's great for, if you have family that lives in a different state, keeping up with them, through that way. But when we keep up with people that we can actually meet face to face. And I even had a student ask me one time, talking about, of course, back when I was in college, we didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, how did you know what was going on? And I'm like, we talked. We would call on the actual phone and say, hey, we're meeting at 9:00 on Friday night here, and made plans. And the thing about other, like Snapchat, though, too, is back then, we may have been not invited to a party, but we didn't know about it until it was all over with. And now with Snapchat, you see your friends at a party in real time, and you weren't invited, and it really hurts. So I think that makes a big difference too, because when we would find out that we weren't invited, it's already over with.
Yeah.
But knowing that it's happening right now and you're not invited.
And you compare to your present, what are you doing right there?
Exactly. Yeah.
And it might not be as great of a party or whatever. But
and that's, people always say FOMO, the fear of missing out, instead of JOMO. Sometimes it's the joy of missing out. Mm-hmm. There's so many times that we go just because we're afraid we're going to miss out something, and then we end up having a bad time, or we get used our time.
I've heard a lot of that.
Yeah. So if we stop worrying about what other people think and live our lives how we want, it's going to make a big difference in your happiness level. But sometimes it takes a little experience to get to that point. Mm-hmm. But it's extremely liberating when you don't care what anyone thinks anymore.
Right.
And we're not talking about your personal hygiene, still shower and things like that. But you don't care if you want to pursue a career, or if you want to
go do something on your own, or watch a movie.
Exactly. Yeah. And not worry about how many likes you get. It's really and I've had a lot of students that actually during the semester stopped social media and realized how much time they had spent doing that time waster. They found out they were more productive with their classes, and they did have better relationships when they stopped doing it through the phone.
Wow.
That is hard.
It is. It's a terrifying thought that cell phones are really just a social clutch, right? So like, if you have a deficiency in your social skills, you're just using that cell phone as a way to filter that in all situations. Yeah. Maybe people might not take, I don't know what people take for anxiety and stuff like that, but they might just use their phone as a way to block out the external environment.
And going back to meditation, it also helps because you're focusing on one thing at a time when you meditate, and that helps with all the anxiety that we have from so many distractions going on in our life. Every time your phone, at least if you remove the notifications from your social media, that can help. You're not constantly being dinged back to your phone. And attention deficit disorder, that creates that. So meditation is such a good tool to use to help, even if you're going to continue on with that type of lifestyle. At least it's going to help you with your focus. And there's even, going back to the phone where it can be useful, there's some free apps that you can use for meditation, like Headspace and Calm and Insight Timer.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, so
my phone's actually in grayscale. It's in black and white. That's the reason. I'm really big on, so like now we're in the attention economy, and I think I look at everything from like economist perspective, right? I think to win in attention economy is really if you can obtain or control your own focus. And the whole reason why it's like these tech companies hires a lot of psychologists and stuff to do like color psychology, and Snapchat is actually really insidious. I read this article about how they mimic a slot machine by pulling it down. So essentially it's like you can pull it down and they can actually get the information right away, but they kind of slow it down a little bit to get the anticipation. And that basically hijacks the psychology of the human. And that terrifies me. The same thing with like color psychology, where they use different color. And I thought about this. Like, it's very rare in nature, unless you see a very beautiful bird or you hike somewhere and see something really beautiful, see all that color on one screen.
Yeah.
Very rare.
Yep. That's true.
Yeah. And we'll have, I imagine it's like our biology hasn't caught up to the way technology has worked, right? And we're basically be hijacked in a way.
So you feel it's going to get worse before it gets better?
Most definitely.
Yeah.
I think it's going to hit I keep thinking about like it's going to hit somebody's wallet. Where, maybe the worker become not as productive, or maybe certain things slowing down. And then they're like, okay, we need like fundamentally shift, right? I wish I had more trust in humanity. I think, we'll just start doing good. But I think unless people start feeling certain constraints, that's going to affect their life and their well-being. They don't really change.
And if we start locally, they say think globally but act locally,
right,
and make the small changes in your own community, and it can catch on.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's not going to be anything like it's how to start from the grassroots movement.
I agree. Yeah, but there's a lot more. Sean Acor is another, going back to the happiness part, he's an expert in that, and he provides a lot of free stuff. He has a great TED Talk on happiness. So I think if people, again, start with themselves, and then as we talked about, it kind of spreads out when you're around people.
Very much so.
Yeah, so it's something, if we each try, it's going to make ourselves happier. It's going to make people around us happier also.
I noticed, as you get happy, you start maybe in this new spirituality age, right? We believe that would raise our vibration and stuff. But you do start attracting people that's you start forming a tribe, but you might find a tribe of people that have that sustained boost on
exactly.
Pockets.
Yeah. And who wants to be around someone that's unhappy all the time too? So
right.
You have a tendency to not want to be around those type of people. And again, then that snowballs into the isolation and depression that some people have. But so if we start with ourselves and go from there, it can make a difference.
I'm really interested in your advice on this, right? So what about people that, let's say, maybe you have a friend or someone that's in a place that's not very happy. How can people help? Because I feel like you work with a lot of kids, and I feel like you have dealt with this for a long time.
We first recommend counseling. If someone, at least especially on a college campus, the counselors on campus have probably covered any problem that a college student might have. You are like a community in yourself.
Right.
So the anxiety that you have from pressure, from doing well, your parents are creating pressure on you to get straight A's. You're probably working. You're trying to keep a social life. You're trying to have a relationship. So there's so much pressure that sometimes you're just how your brain is like a computer circuit, and it could just completely shut down. So by visiting someone in the counseling center is a great place just to have someone to talk to. Our brain is just like any other part of our body. If we have a physical ailment, we don't hesitate to go see a doctor to fix something. So why would we treat our brain any differently? And if the counselor, if you have an issue that they are not equipped to deal with, they can give you a recommendation to someone that specializes in that area. So I would start with that. But if you have someone that's unwilling to even to do that, there's also the care on campus. There are a lot of peer counselors there. I've had students that work there, and sometimes it's easier to hear, as you mentioned, someone that's your peer to give you advice than someone that's not in your generation. And every student I've had that's worked with care, they have been outstanding. I mean, they are just really almost, I don't want to say old soul, but they're wise beyond their years, and they're very helpful and make a huge difference for someone. So getting help is the first place if you're at that spot where you can't take on like the 12 strategies we talked about. Find a way to find a professional that can help you get started.
I feel like college years are very interesting, right? Like most time people will face something really difficult.
Oh, sure.
During those years.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like there's certain trends that happen every year when new freshman and sophomore comes in. It's like they repeated trends. They just happen over and over again.
Yeah, and you take advantage of the resources on campus.
Right.
Even something as we talked about eating well, how that contributes to the blue zones and to happiness as well. The dietitian on campus, if you were off campus in a community and you wanted her services to be $100 an hour. Yeah. So I try to encourage my students, take advantage of meeting with her for an hour, make an appointment, Chelsea Stan, and she can tell you, and she's the type of dietitian, she's like, you have to eat this, and she's not like that at all. She will adapt to your current, what you're eating and guide you from that point on.
She's really great.
Yeah. So if college students would take advantage of what they have on campus to learn new things, take advantage of what campus recreation offers, where you can go backpacking or kayaking, and so be engaged, and that will help. And you learn these skills in college, you can take it with you.
Yeah, wow. It's interesting, right? Like, I'm about to graduate, and I hear people that graduated always talk about, like, oh, I didn't know this existed on campus and stuff like that. It's fascinating.
Yeah, there's
Or
so
maybe even
much.
just like they don't feel the maybe like a state of anxiety or even pressure to know that it's going to be taken away, right? It's like
Right.
we'll live by the beach and we always think it's going to be there, so we don't really go to the beach as much. And people
That's a
think
great point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing with like rec center or the dietitian.
And then before you know it, you're graduating.
Yeah, before you know it, you graduate.
And it flies by.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah.
So they have, I think Denmark is where they have the co-housing and single moms that can live in an apartment building, and they can help each other out when one mom has to go to work. So it's almost like going back to more people helping raise
going
your
back to that
child.
smaller community, a smaller tribe.
Yep.
Just more efficient.
And one person's responsible for cooking a meal, dinner time for 100 people. So you may spend a couple hours one day out of the month cooking a lot, but then the other 29 days, you come home from work and someone else has cooked your meal for you.
Mm-hmm. And
so that cohesiveness has helped them also. When you are a single parent living with other people and helping each other out, it's great group dynamics.
As a business major, I noticed something. Some of my peers are very successful, or where you can tell that they're going to be very successful, right? But they're very individually focused in a way. And I think about this a lot. Like, maybe 10 or 20 years down the road, they're very advanced up, but then they realize everybody else is kind of so far behind they can't relate to it.
Yeah, that's happening more than people realize.
Yeah.
I guess in your area, you probably see it more.
Right. Very cutthroat.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's all about balance, because you want to be able to trust people, but you don't want to be a fool either.
Right.
So sometimes people have that where they've been taken advantage of by people. So you have to, again, help people when you can, but also make sure that you're not being taken advantage of in the process.
Right.
So it's, there's that balance with everything. And in yoga, we have a give and take where do it equally, and we think about people that are usually takers, but sometimes certain people always give but then refuse help, and then they end up getting burnt out and having issues as well. So when you can give someone help, do it, but when you need help, make sure you ask for help as well.
It's kind of an interesting question. So I've always wondered, what are the downsides to like the hippie culture and things like that?
Are you talking?
I think it's like a pendulum, right? Because before them, was very strict and things like that, and then they want to be liberated, and then I think as society goes on, it goes back and forth.
Yeah,
trying to find that middle point.
I think it goes back to what we talked about Singapore being one of the happiest places, because they have concrete rules. So some people feel more like a child. If you give a child free reign and it makes them uncomfortable where they have no boundaries.
Is that rules for themselves? Is that rules for other people? Because if they expect other people to follow certain rules, they might feel safe. They build certain pre-trust through interacting in society, knowing that there's no safety from other people.
And it's the keyword safety there, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, and it kind of goes back. We talk a lot about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
If you don't have that established, your physical needs and the loving and belonging and safety's in there, you can't become self-actualized or your potential, your purpose in life. Ikigai, I'm kind of going over the place, but Ikigai is a Japanese term for knowing your purpose in life. So if you can find your passion, something that you're good at, something that the world needs that you get paid for, so that's the key for you going into the workforce, is finding something that you don't dread getting up every morning and going to work. I had a student in my last semester that he said every morning he woke up and he was like, oh, this again? And his first thought in the morning was negativity. So he started waking up, and instead of thinking, he started thinking about the 5 positive things going on in his life. And he woke up in a bed, he had shelter, he had access to water and food, and he had really good roommates, friends. So he expanded from that. But then if you go into a workforce where it's your passion instead of a job, it's gonna lead to an exciting life.
Right. It seems like this movement coming back to like finding your purpose. It's a great time to be. I keep thinking about it. Right? Like if this is backing like feudalism, finding your purpose might be too hard.
Yeah, but find your passion sounds a little bit easier to do. Another resource on campus is career services.
Right.
That if you don't know, because I know it's hard. I did the same thing to you. You're graduating. Oh, what do you plan on doing then?
Right.
So people do this to, or especially your generation, I feel, and although I remember it in mine as well, that they expect you to follow the norms that they did.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you graduated from high school, now you need to go to college. Oh, you graduated from college, now you need to get married. Oh, you're getting married, now you have kids. Oh, you had your first child, now you need your second one. So we feel so much pressure from even our family that we should do what society expects us to do, and that creates a lot of unhappiness in people too. Maybe you don't, and when we see everyone else around us, it seems like getting married or getting the job of their dreams, and then we compare that to ourselves again. So if we can just live our path and figure out what's right for us and not worry about what anyone else is going to be.
It's interesting you brought that up. I just finished the book, The Defining Decade, which is about the 30 is not a new 20 anymore, which is, I think, so she had a TED Talk about this. And I think it's like the pendulum has swung the other way too far, where marriage are later, everything's kind of later and pushed back, right? But then she's talking about how when you do that math, like if you want to have a child, the later on it gets more risks that are involved, and it's not that easy to get pregnant and stuff like that. And she's really just like, it's almost like this older mom coming back, right, to this generation and warning them, like, yes, you have the freedom to kind of, more than last generation or so, to roam around, explore in your 20s and stuff. But if you wait too late, then it's really too late. Mm-hmm. And then,
and people think that they have options that
until they run out.
But they may not. Oh, freeze your eggs, but it doesn't always work out.
Yeah.
So that's definitely,
being human is tough.
Yeah,
being human is tough. It's like really trying to find that middle point, right? Like, how long should you spend on? It's almost like you're going to college and most people don't know what they want to do, right? But then how long do you spend on like dabbling in things until you're like, all right, I need to settle down on this one thing. Right.
Having a plan.
Yeah.
And that's why you should always have goals. Always. Again, if you spiritual goals, physical goals, social goals, figure out, and again, don't have so many that's overwhelming, but figure out what's important to you and then make a plan and how you can achieve that. And then again, have it where you can see it every day to remind you, this is what's important to me. So maybe having your career goals by a certain time, and then once you get to that age, then reevaluate and think, am I ready to, or if you even want to. So many people have kids because they think they're expected to. And it should be, you should not let anyone else dictate something as important as that in your life. Because you have to live the results of that, not the person that says you need to do this.
Right.
So it's hard, but like you say, it's hard being human.
Yeah. I keep thinking about, like, it'd be so great if you were born and there's like a manual guide given to you to every baby, right? But every guide's a little different and has exactly the most optimal food for you because you're DNA and things like that.
And sometimes people are so unhappy because their life hasn't turned out how they wanted it to be. But that's when you go back to what I mentioned with Eckhart Tolle, change it, leave it, or
change it any time.
Figure out how to adapt to it if you can't do either one. And it should be exciting.
Most definitely.
Yeah, so instead of being...
But also it brings a state of anxiety. Like Nietzsche talks about this, right? So once you realize you're in control of your destiny, it brings a state of anxiety comes to you because all the consequences are on your own as well.
Exactly. Try to be excited instead of scared.
Right.
Think about it, change the way you think about something. And it's basically, we are what we think about. And so that's a great place to start, going back to what we talked about previously. If you have a friend that, start changing your thoughts. And I know it sounds simplistic, but a lot of people believe that you can choose your thoughts like you chose what to wear. So it just takes practice, just like anything else.
What about the darker side of these positive psychology? I think I started seeing these, the book I'm reading, he talks about this, like the darker side of these positive psychology, where if you only imagine that you have to change your thoughts and stuff like that, it might not work out in a way that even if you don't truly believe it, right? And I'm really intrigued with what more he's going to talk about.
So if you're thinking that...
I remember his TED Talk about how so in our society, in a way, it's like we have a little too optimistic, right? Like too optimistic and too, like we always have to smile all the time, or like, you know, and maybe if the reality is not that great, like I guess the best example is this, right? Like imagine Soviet Russia. Like what if everybody was in a culture where everybody had to smile, but they know the condition wasn't so great, right? So that how they view the world is going on and how what's really happening, right? And I think that's really dangerous too.
I agree.
It's like that middle ground.
Right. But I also believe in, again, going back to your thoughts, if you think I can or I can't,